thank you so much. As said in the introduction, my focus in the focus of my research is small state security and foreign policy. And what I will do in my talk is to say a little bit about why small states seek membership in the UN Security Council based on the research that we have on this. And then I will say something about how to achieve success when you are in the UN Security Council, with a focus on Denmark and the current challenges and changes in the international order. If we start with the question of why do small states seek membership of the UN Security Council, I think there's a growing body of work there. Ulrika is a prominent contributor to this work. This table is from some of the work of Baldur Thorhaldsen, who actually builds on the work of Anne-Marie Ekengren and Ulrika. And he argues, and Ulrika and Marie points to, that there are basically three reasons why smaller states would seek membership of the UN Security Council. One is to shape decisions, that is regarding the national security, or to promote specific principles and values that they believe in. Second, to expand the network, access to the permanent five, also to establish other types of contacts. And third, to work on status, to seek status via membership, or to maintain their status as supporters and constructors of an international rule-based order. I think if we look to Denmark and how does Denmark fit into this kind of way of thinking about why smaller states would seek membership, I think when it comes to shaping decisions, Denmark's national security is firmly embedded in NATO primarily, whereas we have traditionally and continue to promote important goals and principles in value politics through the UN. So I've marked this kind of with a yellow marker here to promote specific principles and values. In regard to the networks, I think an important goal here is to maintain and strengthen networks already there. Denmark is a competent and heavily embedded network actor in the international order, but this is also an opportunity to establish other types of contacts. And I think both when working in the Security Council, but also now during the campaign, being in contact with and dialogue with a wide spectrum of different states. And when regard to work on status, if Denmark had not sought UN Security Council membership at this point, this would entail certainly the risk of a status loss. I would say that would kind of that would damage the Danish brand and status as a country working for a legal and rule-based international order. So here it's mainly also a question of maintaining status. I think the campaign to the UN Security Council is important in itself. For a country like Denmark, I think it's important for signaling by saying we want to be members. We signal that Denmark is an active and constructive player, contributing to maintaining and also developing a rule-based international order. And I think also in terms of specific priorities regarding rule of law, human rights, peace and security, global development, and our climate and environmental policy, we can signal our priorities in these areas. I think also the campaign is important for information gathering. It's a reality check on Danish priorities. When we seek support for our membership, how do other states react to our priorities and what we want to do in the council, and to Denmark's priorities in general. And also it's of course a listening exercise, an information gathering exercise. What are other states' priorities? How are they affected by current changes in the international order? So prioritizing a campaign I would say is also highly valuable for Danish foreign policy in general. And then, of course, third, strengthening and building networks, countering the risk of engaging mainly with the usual suspects in what we do, but talking to many different types of states in many different regions. So how do small states influence the UN Security Council? Baldur Thorhallsson, in a work he did a decade ago, listed 3 conditions for small state success in the UN Security Council. He said they need to be competent, they need to know what they do, take initiative, and have the skills for diplomatic networking, coalition building, and leadership. Second, the international status and image of the state is important. Is this state seen as a messenger for great powers, or seen as an independent decision maker that can take its own decisions and promote its own agendas? Is it even a norm entrepreneur in particular fields? And finally, the capacity and capability. Does this state have the necessary diplomats, resources allocated for UN security membership, or maybe not only for UN Security Council membership, but also for UN Security Council membership success and the UN more generally, both allocated in regard to negotiating and being part of the council, but also the pool of background resources back in the capital, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So how does Denmark score when we look on these conditions for success of small states in the UN Security Council? Well, I would think that we would score quite highly on competence. We have highly skilled diplomats, good networks. We have a history also of taking initiative, creating diplomatic coalitions, also as Ulrika mentioned, with other Nordic countries and other states, and to some extent also taking leadership in this. The international status and image of the state. I think this is where the changes in the current international order comes in. It has become more difficult, perhaps, to maintain your brand. It has become also a little bit existential on what your brand or status is in international affairs. Who are we? Are we the Scandinavian social liberals, the loyal junior partners to the United States? I think Danish foreign policy is both for good reasons. Are we seen as a force of good as we think we are? The campaign is probably useful for a reality check here, and therefore also for a basis on how to navigate if and when we get into the council. And then finally, capacity and capability. One might say this is fortunately a point where we can do something ourselves as a fairly rich and resourceful country. How many diplomats do we allocate for the UN Security Council membership? Does this number reflect the ambitions and also the experience of previous memberships and of other recent memberships of smaller states and middle powers? For instance, how do we compare with resource allocation in similar states such as Norway? All things equal, we would say that a more conflictual and divided international environment would call for more diplomats, because you need to do more work kind of behind the closed door and in informal settings. What will be the strategies for success if and when Denmark becomes a member of the UN Security Council? Here I will draw on some work that I am currently doing with Jonas Fritzler from Bielefeld University and Caroline Grøn from Aarhus University, and there we focus on how small states exercise leadership in the UN, not only in the Security Council, but also in other forums. And our starting point is that since smaller states and middle powers will have a difficult time coercing other states to do anything, what they need to do is to exercise leadership in the sense of influencing others to understand and agree about what needs to be done and how to do it, and the processes of facilitating individual and collective efforts to achieve shared objectives. And we basically say there are three aspects of this, what we call positional leadership, relational leadership, and processual leadership. And when it comes to what we call positional leadership, and we draw kind of from the organization literature here, we say that this is the leadership that is related to taking advantage of formal roles and position. So being a member of the UN Security Council in itself is to get the opportunity to get positional leadership. You get a position on the council that gives you access to information and to voice your concerns and agendas. It will also mean actively using UN Security Council presidency, as Shamala Kantia mentioned, assuming penholder role in specific country or thematic issues. And also, I would say that's kind of maybe in a gray area, but also creating a semi-formal role in the margins of UN Security Council work, organizing, heading special events. And the challenges here for Denmark will be, do we have enough resources to do this allocated? And do we have the right resources allocated for doing this? Do we have the expertise that we need to do this? And if we don't, how do we get it? How can we learn from other recent presidencies, for instance? Then there's the relational aspect. We would say that relational leadership has two building blocks. One is transactional. That is basically I give you something and you give me something in return. That would be something like buying and swapping votes or support in various forums. This will be more often associated with the great powers than the smaller states, which again would need to create a following for the ideas, what we call transformational leadership, relying on negotiated influence, that is kind of creating a narrative for what we are doing and why we are doing it. That involves moral arguing, saying why is it good for us to do this? Technical arguing, how is this possible? And also reframing questions. Why did we not think of this before? Why is this important to address this problem right now? And here we see a lot of challenges, I think, related to current developments in the international order. We see the rise of great power rivalry that Shamala Kandia also touched upon. Perhaps a weakened the United States, but also a division increasingly between China and the United States. Russia seeking its own offensive and aggressive position, and rising regional powers and states of the global south, as was mentioned earlier also. We have the decline of old institutions, and perhaps in particular as of a global institution like the UN, associated with the growing acceptance of regionalization of politics and spheres of influence. So if the future is defined by kind of regionally bound orders led by some of the great powers, China, Russia, the United States, where does this leave global dialogue and cooperation? It's more important than before, but certainly also more difficult. And then finally, we have what we could call the processual leadership, that is creating forums for dialogue and cooperation, bringing insights and understandings back into the formalized structures of the UN. Canada was mentioned earlier as a state who had been unsuccessful on some parameters, but our research also shows how Canada was actually successful in doing this in the initial phase of R2P. Challenges for Denmark: it requires long-term commitment of aims, means and resources, great power rivalry and small state and middle power hedging, that is, who wants to commit to certain agendas. How do we identify these niches and how do we navigate them? I think all three types of leadership requires what we could call an offensive pragmatism, that we seek a pragmatic, perhaps even opportunistic approach. We focus on what works, what can be achieved, and have a willingness to an ability to prioritize and to kind of change the course as we go along. So finally, where does this leave Denmark? Well, there are plenty of challenges out there, has been said already today, and in many other places recently: greater complexity, regionalization, rivalry, and war. I think basically Denmark is well placed to take advantage of this situation. We have had traditionally, what I would call a functionally pragmatic approach to international organizations, taken advantage of membership for pursuing our own goals, whether in more narrow self-interest, but in particular, I think in our value agenda. I think the recent re-articulation by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of a pragmatic idealism, even if it's perhaps not so clearly defined as of yet, fits well with the new reality. And I think we are competent and experienced in thinking in functional networks and niche cooperation. Thank you.